This chapter focuses on two main pieces of Obamacare and what the state should do about them.
North Carolina has two big decisions to make regarding the implementation of Obamacare. One of them is whether to accept the Medicaid dollars associated with Medicaid expansion. That's the biggest part of Obamacare. It's not all the exchanges and the private sector mandates and market regulations. Most of Obamacare is just a straight-up expansion of government-run health insurance through Medicaid. North Carolina should say no to the idea, and we talk about that at some length in the chapter. The other decision to make is whether to have a state exchange for private regulated health insurance or to allow the federal government to set up and run its own exchange. There may be some superficial attraction for the state to set up its own exchange, but we argue in the book that you get very little benefit from that decision, mostly cost, and you muddy the responsibility of this bill. This is a bill imposed on the states by Washington, and we believe the federal government ought to be responsible for carrying out its rather flawed health insurance policies. So we recommend the states say no to both health exchanges and Medicaid expansion.
Some people will hear conservative group is against these ideas from Obamacare, and it's just because they don't like President Obama. If the state went forward with the state-based exchange and the Medicaid expansion, what would be the downside for us to doing that?
North Carolina would incur some costs, at least in the long run, to its own state budget if it expanded Medicaid and if it took on the role of operating state insurance exchanges. In addition to those fiscal costs, I just don't think the state of North Carolina needs to be in the business of trying to implement what is an inherently flawed and likely to be disastrous piece of legislation. We need to be very clear about who's responsible for the resulting damage to the health insurance market. It isn't going to be the state. It isn't going to be the legislature. It's going to be President Obama and Congress. And we need to make that very clear and preserve the ability of the state to challenge these future intrusions into its area of domestic policy.